Okay. Hello, Joanna. Nice to see
Hi.
you. We finally settled in. How
I
have you
know.
been today? What's the
Oh,
day like for
amazing.
you today?
Yeah, really good.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's been quite busy and just there's some wild energy outside with the weather, so it's always interesting. But yeah, no, it's
So,
been great.
hi, everyone that's online, thanks for joining us. I'm here with Joanna. Joanna is part of Girls Talk Business, and we actually met on one of the feeds online, didn't we? We started conversing and we started chatting away about what you do, which was really interesting because you and I seem to be tapping into the same sort of energy fields. So that was really cool. We stayed in touch, and I think we just wanted to find out a bit more about your journey because I know you've written this amazing book, and
Yeah.
I read it. So tell us a bit about who you are and your background.
So my background is advertising based, actually. So I was in the corporate world for many, many years. And I worked in New York and London and in New Zealand and in Australia in advertising. And I was in account management, so dealing with client service. So it was a beautiful creative industry and it took me all around the world. But I sort of was always feeling a bit not as deeply fulfilled as I would have liked, even though it was a really successful career and gave me a lot of things I loved. But I just felt like there was something more for me. So I was sort of morphing and changing and into different parts of the advertising industry, thinking that was going to sort of like address my needs and moving into production and things like that. But then I didn't really find that. So on the side, I was going off and having all these exploratory journeys just to sort of like ignite personal transformation. So I went and had a series of all sorts of different adventures, again, all around the world. And then, yeah, that brought me to giving me all of the information to write the book.
So how much can we delve into this book? Because one of the adventures you're talking about is obviously the 9/11, which seems like like a lifetime ago now. But do you want to tell us a bit about how you found yourself there and what your experience was like?
So the book kicks off with my experience of 9/11, and I had literally just moved to New York in April of 2001. I was about 22 and I was quite naive and green, and I'd never been to New York before. And I had basically, moved over there to start a job, and I only been there a few months, like I was really, really fresh off the boat, and found myself in that pretty impactful experience that definitely gave me a bit of an awakening and sort of directed me really deeply into myself to understand what was going on a different kind of level. I just felt a very different kind of experience than a lot of people have written about or talked about in regards to 9/11, and I sort of just had some quite different perspective and realizations about it. I think that really spurred me on my journey to finding out more meaning and depth to my life that I was wanting to experience. So it really stayed with me, and it's just it's obviously everybody sort of remembers that experience, and it will definitely stay with me for forevermore until but it was one of those life-changing kind of experiences, because I just don't think you're ever prepared for something like that to happen at all.
Not at such a young age, right? I mean, that must have been such an insight. And made you probably grow up quite quickly. As you say, you start the book off with the 9/11 story, and it seems to be the starting point of your journey following through and trying to find that reason, right? The reason, the little voice inside us that keeps asking us those questions. Why are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to feel like I was sort of, I was here for a reason, and it felt like even though I was having this experience in this big city, and in those years in New York, I became successful in my advertising career and was doing all these incredible successful campaigns and award-winning stuff, but it just, for me, it just fell flat a little bit, even though it was sort of this, you know, high-flying career in one of the most amazing cities in the world. But it wasn't enough for me, because I was looking for something deeper and more fulfilling, and you know, I wanted to feel purposeful in what I was doing, and that it was having an impact and meaning for others as well, I think, on the journey. Yeah.
So, you know, the way you wrote your book, did you write those little nuggets through your whole life, or did you, when you started writing your book, did you have to go back through your memory and write it from memory, or did you keep a journal?
I mainly kept journals. Yeah. I mean, there were some bits that, for example, Kilimanjaro, because I was so ill when I was there.
God, that was an amazing,
terrible. It was about 3 pages of notes, and I sort of went back thinking, oh no, and I had to go through my photos, and I had to ask other people who were there with me to help me rewrite that stuff, because usually I would just write it in great detail like I did with Camino and with 9/11, you know, but yeah, that was a different ball game. I was too ill to write anything, you know, basically with altitude sickness at the top of the mountain. So that was it. So yeah, I went back in, but I feel I'm a better writer when I write it in the moment, and when I, you know, I can, you know, do it the other way around, but I prefer much better to do it when I'm in it.
So can you tell us one funny moment from the book? Can you share with everybody what you feel was
just to give everyone a bit of perspective, this journey of my personal evolution is a bit like the Comedy of Errors version. I guess sort of align it to Bridget Jones meets Eat, Pray, Love on steroids, or Sex, Drugs and Spirituality, you know, the unconventional path from dark to light. I mean, it's, you know, it's one of those. So there's a lot of humor that runs through it. And so I would go on these, you know, adventures wanting to have sort of an enlightening experience that was going to be transforming for my life and bring me my purpose and all this kind of stuff, and, you know, heal me from all my like shadow. And then, you know, it would always turn into not what I expected at all. So I think, you know, that's a theme that's running through the book. But one funny moment that did happen was that when I did the Camino, I was chasing my pilgrim stallion, because I thought, if I'm going to get anything out of this and it's not going to be enlightenment, then I want my pilgrim stallion. And so I ended up at the end of it actually getting my pilgrim stallion, which is amazing. He worked in, he told me he was in the SAS, and I, in my sort of naive, delusional mind, thought that was like basically like a really hot Maxwell Smart who was this secret agent that, you know, was sort of like this quite dashing, handsome guy, and he just did this sort of quite fabulous job. And cut to when I was sort of based back in London, and I was working, and I was going in to brief my creative team, and I'd heard from this SAS guy, and he had sort of been in touch for a date because he was in London. And I was telling them about this and like how amazing it was, and this hot SAS guy, and they were like, "You do know what the SAS do, Jo, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, they go and do secret sort of, you know, things, and they like pull off all these amazing things for the good of the world." And they're like, no, not at all. And they showed me videos of SAS and their kind of territorial style, you know, action, and I was sort of like absolutely horrified, because yeah, I sort of was like, oh my god, I'm going on a date with the cold hard killer kind of vibe, rather than this dashing kind of handsome prince kind of, you know, secret agent kind of style thing that I'd totally manufactured in my head. So, you know, just one of those classic moments. But I remember my horror in that time, and they were like absolutely just losing it. My creative team were laughing at me. It's like, oh, what are you up to, Jo? But yeah, so that was one funny bit, but there's many in the book.
In the book. I have to ask you, so when we spoke about doing this interview, it was during COVID, and we decided to wait a while till COVID settled down. How has it been for you? Has it been a bit of a challenge launching a book through the COVID experience?
Yes, I definitely, you know, well, first of all, I actually realized that my book, I'd been really frustrated with it for quite some time because in my mind, I should have had it out a year earlier. I didn't understand why I kept getting delayed and all sorts of stuff. And when COVID happened, I mean, I was sort of, lining it up to be launched a few months later. But when it happened, I sort of looked at what was going around and I just had this really strong intuition that I needed to launch it immediately. And when I went in to look at the last chapter thinking, I wonder if I need to make any comment or adjust things, and it's literally like I'd written that last chapter specifically for what is happening right now on the planet. So that was really quite something because I'd wrote it years ago. And but so I had to bring the launch, so I brought the launch forward actually and launched it as an ebook. And in New Zealand, that's a little tricky because not everyone is as predisposed to e-readers and Amazon as, people in the UK and the US. So that was a challenge in itself. And then obviously not having a physical launch like you would a normal book launch, it was all sort of reversed for me. I was always planning to do the ebook later as an add-on, but this made me do it first. But you know what? It's worked out actually quite beautifully because it means that it's had time to get out there. People have read it. There's a bit more reviews and stuff. So, being new to the book business, it's been very enlightening on on how to do it. So I think, it's actually just happened as only it should. It's kind of perfection in a weird kind of way.
Which brings me to we talked about maybe giving away a few ebooks, right, before we did this live show. And we have a little Facebook user that has popped up a little smiley face, is it? A little laughing face. But if you could, and if you want to get hold of Joanna's book, we're going to give away 5 ebooks. So if you want to put your name in here and get in touch with us, we can send you those ebooks now. So if you guys are interested in Joanna's book, make a comment with your name and Joanna will be in touch with you to send you those vouchers for an ebook. Is that right, Joanna?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's probably important to mention that this, although it's a transformational travel adventure and it's the story of my journey of personal evolution, there's lots of nuggets in there for anybody on their personal journey. And that there's actually, after the feedback from readers so far is that it's really been quite magically amazing for them. They're experiencing more synchronicity and flow and alignment. They're feeling more grounded and their true self, and they're having a different perspective on reality. So they're finding that they're just ready to let go of things that perhaps haven't been helping them or they've been struggling with, and allowing them to, with a more expanded perspective on things, move forward, which is beautiful. Like, I mean, as an author, you can only hope that people are going to have such amazing connection with a book and experience from reading it and it reflected in their own life. But it's been really quite powerful. So, I mean, it was always my intention to have it help people and to inspire people for, in different kinds of ways. But the fact that it's having real visible results in people's lives after reading it and absorbing the energy of it and the insights and the wisdom that I sort of layer through there is really powerful and amazing.
So how did you come up with the Inside Hustle? How did you come about that name? What was the inspiration behind that?
So, the overarching idea of this book is that I'm essentially searching around the world, going on all these amazing adventures and experiences and different teachers and, all sorts. And I'm really just looking outside of myself for answers the whole time. And, what I come to the conclusion of in the end really is that it's all anchored here. And it is about how we work with ourself, and our relationship with ourselves governs every other relationship in the world, like in our world, and it governs our experience in reality, and it just impacts everything: career, relationships, kids, just life in general. So when we're in right relationship with ourselves, it's experienced by us in our reality, because that's how we interact in an energetic way. And so the Inside Hustle just is about that fact that it is about this. It's about, like, there's all sorts of amazing untapped technology and potential here that resides that a lot of us aren't delving into. And it's, when I really understood those principles, because it's all fine to sort of say, oh, you know, all the it's all inside you, all the answers are within. Like, what does it even mean? Like, I heard that a gazillion years ago, but I didn't really know what it meant. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm looking for all these things, and, you know, I'm understanding this and that and whatever, but, like, it just didn't make sense to me. Like, I wasn't experiencing it, I think, for me on a level for me to really have an in-depth experience of that working for me, creating results in my world, and then, you know, understanding really how that mechanism works. And I think there's a lot of, you know, the sort of talk of it without the backing up of, like, how exactly do you do that? So, you know, the book is very much how I did that.
I think you and I are on the same wavelength. I have to experience it to understand it, to feel it, to then talk about it. Learning it from a piece of paper and absorbing it that way just doesn't seem the same. You don't get that same sort of feeling that you've achieved something if you haven't experienced it yourself. So I think that's definitely an interesting life journey, isn't it? We've got to experience so much to then be able to feel it and talk about it and then share it with everybody else. And
I also, you know, I think that the big difference that I understood is that we've all got our individual divine blueprint or inner genius that is literally specific to us. There's nobody else on the planet who has what we have in our makeup, right? So when you start understanding that, and that the answers aren't going to come from anywhere else apart from you, and they could trigger it and they could be part of the journey, but really it's about tapping into our own inner genius or unlocking our own Rubik's Cube within, when we really start to get the gold. And then we're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be like everybody else. Oh, I'm supposed to do it this way. It's totally different. You know, like, when you really get that, that is part of the state of empowerment, as opposed to disempowering ourselves in so many ways. I mean, God, I just did that. You know, like, if I was an expert in anything, it was like getting in my own way and disempowering myself.
It's the acceptance of self, right? But how do you get there? That's the journey we're all on, isn't it? The journey of getting to accepting ourselves and our own uniqueness, and then being able to step into that and say, yeah, this is me and this is what I have to offer. So it's an interesting topic, because that's the sort of journey I'm on right now, doing what you love to do, and actually stepping into that is the fearful factor, isn't it? Well, it can be for some people.
Yeah, it can be. And then it again comes down to that relationship with the self, because you know, when you know, I also got the t-shirt of doubt and self-judgment and criticism, you know, like, and that was also dismantling my own state of myself. And so, I mean, there was no wonder I was, like, swimming around and you know, it was awful. But now I really have such a deep understanding of reality and how I operate within it and what I do, because, you know, what we do want is alignment and flow in all the key areas of our lives, with our relationships and our career and success and abundance and all of that good stuff, you know. And once you sort of start to crack that code within, I feel like all of that stuff starts to come in. And not only that, but it comes in with ease and grace. So you're not actually reaching for it and clawing at it. It just pops in and it all comes to you, and you're like, oh, show me the goods. This is great. No, it's perfect.
Which brings me to the subject I'm sure everybody would like to know. Did you find your stallion, or have you found your stallion now?
No, at the moment, I am single. So I am still, you know, this book was like a huge project for me. I've spent almost a decade writing it and getting it out. And so I also felt like, you know, I haven't been in necessarily the right space to meet the man of my dreams. Like, at this point, definitely probably closer than I've ever been now. But because of the big purpose for this book about helping others and about sort of just a bigger vision for how we can understand our own selves, which has an impact into the collective whole on the planet, which is incredibly important right now. So I think I literally needed to birth this book before any distraction came along. But yeah, are you ready now?
I absolutely loved reading your book. I feel like I need to read it again because there was just so much information there that I think it's a really good thing just to pause and absorb sometimes. I have to ask you, those little beautiful paragraphs you had at each chapter.
Yeah.
Who wrote that and where did that come from?
So those parts of the writing is literally, it shows the higher perspective and our higher nature that is always there. But sometimes when we're caught up in the life and the drama and the story that's in front of us, we're not really tuning into that higher wisdom that we have within us. And so those writings were done actually over a period of time when I was sort of really tuning into my highest wisdom, connected to in the most pure way. So that's where those came from. They came from me, but a more eternal connected part of myself that I brought forward in those writings. And it's literally, those are the beautiful part of the book that help people recalibrate and realign back to their true nature. So yeah, and that's the
this is what I mean. I feel like I need to go back and reread. If you could just capture those little verses in a little book on its own, I would love to have that by my bedside table and read it every night because they were amazing. Like those really spoke to me, and I was like, my God, this is amazing. Who wrote this? It's just incredible. And so thank you. I now know it was you. I didn't actually know it was you, but it's good to know was written by you. It's beautiful.
It's funny, a lot of people ask me that. They're like, who wrote these? And I'm like, I did. And they're like, what? And you know what? It's quite funny that you should mention a small book of those things on their own, because I am actually looking at doing that as a little a go-to with more in there and some of those key ones. And they were really, that was actually a stroke of genius of my editor, because I never wanted to show any of those writings to anybody. That was just for me.
No, they were amazing. Put those in the book because they really captured the essence of the actual the chapter as well, and it was like a summary of everything and then a beginning to another chapter. It just got me really interested in reading about it.
That's great.
Beautifully written. So I have this question. Is there anything that you learned on this transformational journey that might specifically help people now in this current time of change and uncertainty?
Well, I mean, I think there is absolute chaos everywhere we look around us, you know. I mean, in New Zealand, we're kind of sheltered actually, but if you look on a global level, everything, there's a lot going on. And I'm of the belief that it's actually all really, really good, because things needed to change. We couldn't keep going along in this world just the way we were, without sort of, you know, ruining the planet and having a relationship with life that was sort of quite superficial and driven by a lot of old school principles that have been brought in over a really long time for us to develop as a civilization, I guess. But, you know, we're being asked to sort of take a real look at those things. And I think it's really, really important to know that you sort of have to break down the old to bring in the new, and change can be really, really uncomfortable, but there's always something out the other side of it. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned along the way is to get comfortable in the unknown and in uncertainty, because, you know, with this whole project, I really, and also my own stuff, I didn't know where I was necessarily going with any of this. I literally didn't know. And I mean, I was writing that book, I had no kind of, I just was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just going to put this together. And everything sort of really crystallized and came into its own in a more beautiful way than I could have imagined at the end of it. And I think it's up to each of us to sort of just hold tight and spend the time going into our own inner world and our own inner genius, because when we're really looking at our own stuff, I mean, we're all connected. We all know that, you know, on an energetic level. There's so much research with all that stuff now. I don't need to go into it. But where we can really make a difference is on an individual basis by, you know, working out if there's anything that we need to look at within the self and need to transmute or transform or bring light to or shift perspective to allow us to evolve further. I mean, I think it's about really opening up our human potential every step we take. So I would advise that, yeah, it's a time to really look in the self to be able to contribute to a shift on a collective level.
I love it. That is so beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. One other question I have for you. So your mum and dad, who you don't actually call them your mum and dad in the book, you use their first names. I found that quite interesting. How did that come about for you?
Oh, what can I say? My family are a bunch of rebels. I mean, I think when my mum, Annie, says to me that when we were little, before we went to school, we would call them Annie and Devo. And that it was only when we went to school that we shifted to call them mum and dad like everybody else, like because everybody else did it. That's the part of conditioning of our life, you know, you start to do what everyone else does. And she sort of decided after a few years of that she didn't like it. And she wanted to go back to what we were originally, you know, calling them. So we were asked to revert back and my you know, tweens, to sort of call them Annie and Devo again as opposed to mum and dad, and that just stuck because we've always had a sort of a respectful adult relationship more than I guess over parenting.
So how is Annie right now? Is she good?
Yeah, I mean she's had her challenges since my dad passed on 5 years ago. So I think, you know, gosh, if I'd been with a partner 40 years like they had, I would find that really challenging and to be on your own and things. So there's definitely a settling in period and a lot of emotional challenges and experience such as that. So, you know, it's definitely been a little bumpy for all of us. I mean, that's grief, isn't it? So, but, you know.
Annie was quite a pivotal role. She has quite a pivotal role in the book, doesn't she? You seem to refer back to her quite a lot, and that's why I'm asking how is she right now, because the book does mention your father's passing, and it was quite an emotional journey for you as well. So it's good to hear that she's doing well.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. She's like the breakout character of the book that everyone loves. They're just like, wow, she's like the character.
She really is. I really would like to meet her, actually. She sounds like a character. Well, we could talk for hours, but I think we should wrap it up now. I think, I could talk to you for hours about the book and about you. I think what you're doing is incredible. I think everyone should grab your book and give it a read and see if it helps them on their journey right now to discover something they possibly haven't discovered about themselves. So thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me today.
My pleasure. I also offer I'm doing some group programs at the moment, and I offer one-on-one mentorships to help sort of recalibrate and realign into new ways of being and doing based on my journey of evolution. And I'm also going to be launching probably a luxury retreat later in the year. So
that was my next question. What's next in the pipeline? So obviously
for all of those things. So I have been putting out some work off the back of the book that I was actually doing before and alongside the book as well. And I've been getting some, I mean, I love helping people on their transformative journey because I struggled so much on my own, I think. So it's really amazing to be able to bring such significant shifts and changes with people's lives and have that reflect back to them and just become something even more new and dynamic and amazing and step more into the human potential that's available to us. So if you all of those things, if you would like to get in touch with me about that, you can either reach me on Facebook.
I have got you on Girls Talk Business website where they click in and go on girlstalkbusiness.com And I've got Joanna there on the front page where you can go and click in, and you'll find the link back to her website. So if you girls want to reach out to her, get to have a chat with her and see how she can help you guys. Yeah, do girlstalkbusiness.com. Alrighty. So thanks so much, Joanna.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad you enjoyed the book, and and I just love what you're doing here with your program, and helping New Zealand women get out there in front of an audience, and it's very much appreciated, all of the work that you do, and I know there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, so thank you very much to you.
Yes, there is. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Great.